So it's an idea that Ben Richards, the writer, and I had been kicking around for a number of years, and we thought that the precinct of a British consulate abroad would provide a really good sort of arena for a drama, character-led drama that could also take in kind of crime and mystery stories. We initially set it on a sort of fictional holiday island, but then we took the script to UK TV, and they really liked it, but they suggested, why don't we do it in a city? Which we thought was a great idea. And then it was just a question of where. And I think we both loved Barcelona as a city we'd visited in. We felt it had a lot of potential. And there was a sort of key fact that drove it ultimately was that it's the most visited European city by UK citizens, which is something you wouldn't guess necessarily. You might go Rome or Paris. So, and the more we dug into it and started to develop the stories, the more you realise there's such a range of different people go to the city, whether it's sort of Hindus, men going to football matches, or art historians, or people just holiday makers, as well as there being quite a strong expat British community around the city. So that was the origins of it. Things that we felt that the consulate format gave us was the ability to see a different story every week, because the stories walk through the door and they're resolved in a relatively short amount of time and people go home. But in order to refresh that kind of story of the week format, we wanted to have the kind of ongoing serial mystery thriller element that had been so successful in our other shows. And so we thought, well, there's a way to combine the two. And I think Ben has skillfully juggled that through the series. And so, the first episode really introduces the serial element. You just get a little story of the week with the Welsh hens. But then subsequently, the serial element grows alongside these individual stories, which are, there's quite a range there, actually.
So I play Laura, who is our consul out there, and she's our way into the story. She's our sort of Brit abroad who manages everything and kind of runs the day to day of the consulate. And I thought she was a really smartly drawn character. She's a woman that I recognise, and I think that's really important. That she seemed really authentic from the off. She's someone that I recognise. I went to school with women like Laura, and I found that a really appealing protagonist. And then I loved the way that you see Laura and Alba interact. It's a really clever, witty, fresh sort of friendship between the two of them, professional and personal. You're saying Alba, so you talk about Alba.
Yes, so I play Alba, who is distinctly has less of a professional shine, but she's the sort of she's British, grew up in Britain, in London, the dodgy end of West London, much like myself. And but she has Spanish parents and she speaks fluent Spanish and Catalan. So she's the sort of streetwise um, aid to the consulate. And so they sort of, Laura and Alba, like come at their jobs from like really different angles and different sort of origins, but they meet at this like really happy place and like work really well together. And I think, yeah, that's what well, first of all, Alba's, like, Ben has written the most fun lines you can have on set. She's very cool and very fun. But also, I think, yeah, similarly, just a female friendship that you don't often see on screen, where there's not any competition, or like there's the odd bit of friction like you would with anyone, I guess, professionally. But it's they're just like it works.
They're really enjoyable characters to spend time with. They're a great foil for each other, and they're just you do enjoy watching them interact in that world and with each other, and that's a great premise for a show. We got through it. We got very close right at the end. People kept getting COVID, and we were like a dodgy plane coming into land. We were like, balls, no one else get COVID. But we managed it. But it was such a joy to be out in Barcelona after, the past couple of years of the fear of how do you get through a job, and everyone was so sort of nervous. It felt really liberating to be out here and be making it happen, and just sort of bringing, like, getting used to COVID being a sort of a fact of life and of production. But we got through it, didn't we?
Yeah, and also I think because Barcelona is sort of like the other main character, like the city is a huge part of, and so actually we were kind of lucky that we had all these like beautiful shooting like locations that were often outside or, you know, showing off the best of Barcelona. So actually I suppose we probably had an edge on that. We weren't like stuck in a studio anyway. We were just like exploring the beautiful architecture of Barcelona most of the time.
The show was slated to shoot in April 2020. But we even had a director and producer on board, and obviously the plug then got pulled, and so we had to wait nearly 2 years. I mean, partly that was COVID, and COVID, you know, the effect on international travel was one of the big things to sort of need to, you know, to come back from. But also, you know, the after effects of Brexit and visas. So there just came a point at the end of last year where we could see enough visibility that we thought it was going to be okay. But there was a degree of anxiety, I have to say, about shooting a whole series in Barcelona. But we had a brilliant production services company in Barcelona called Fresco, and we had a fantastic working relationship with them. And they got us into some brilliant locations that I would never have dreamed we could use. So all in all, you know, it was a really, really positive experience. We've tried to be clever with the stories of the week so that they have very small casts. So if you imagine the problems and the cases that Laura and Alba investigate, probably only involve 2 or 3 British characters. So we knew that for each of the stories we only had to bring out that number of people. It probably meant we kept people in Barcelona longer than you would do on a classic story of the week procedural, but that was just something we had to factor into the budgeting of the show. But beyond that, I mean, the main British cast, you guys were out there for the pretty much the whole period, right? Yeah.
To
We
Barcelona for 3 months, but we did it.
we had to actually bring in the local police to have Sophie escorted from her apartment at the end because she was so desperate to stay.
Apartment in my rap kit. Turns out it could not. It's lovely, actually. Yeah. Because people, I think it's actually really smart because you get great performances because people are coming out to do their story and it's all about them. So rather than their storyline sort of eking out over 6 episodes and they're in for a day and then they're not in for 2 weeks, people would come in, they were doing their storyline and they were brilliant. And it was really lovely for us because you're constantly getting this fresh turnover of new energy and new excitement and a different kind of tone for us all. So it was actually a real pleasure.
Yeah, and I think as the, you know, it means that we, as I think our characters get to do something different every week.
Yeah.
Instead of playing a like 6-week storyline that you're sort of seeing out, it's like, oh, now I get to do this thing because there's these new people and these new challenges to sort of like come up against.
But then constantly tying back to the main sort of arc of the sort of the main narrative of the series. So it was a very smart way of doing it, that you'd go off and do something new. So there's like a new fresh story, a new fresh energy, but then you would bring your character back to what their sort of their main thrust is.
I think Ben layered those two things together really well. Like often the story of the week or the fallout from that or the impact of that would somehow like change the way certain characters relate to each other, which then led to the wider plot. So yeah, it's really, really beautifully sort of all woven together.